Welcome to the Power Sweep podcast. We are back for week 8, another huge week of college football, some big games this weekend, and we've got our totals game of the month in college. Really excited for this weekend, and we had a winning week on our sides last week, a winning week on our totals. NFL didn't do quite as well as we had hoped. The NFL game of the month did not win. But, we are 4-1 in our game of the months. So it's been a pretty good year on our big plays, and we feel like we're getting a better handle on these college sides. I really believe that over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see us inch back towards a better record on our college sides, as well as stay strong in our totals. So good week to jump on board Power Sweep or jump on board the late phones with the totals game of the month. Jim and Robbie, we've got you guys back for another week. Excited to have you. First, I got to say, Jim, congratulations on a 3-0 week on the podcast. Excellent handicapping last week. Great call on Florida State. That was an easy winner. San Jose State was a winner. Miami and Western Michigan over 44.5, cleared pretty easily. So congratulations on getting back in the mix. You've now jumped into second place.
Yeah, thank you. I really needed one of those 3-0 weeks, and it was a long time coming this year, but hopefully we'll be doing all right. And I mean, we did go 5-4 on the podcast, so
yeah,
we can go. I mean, we can turn this around. So
yeah, and we've got plenty of season left. And last week I thought we had some good things happen. We just got to, the SEC plays were good, but I'll take some of the blame on that myself. I am sitting at 10 and 11 on the season, but I am only 5-9 on my sides, 5-2 on my totals. So I've got the best record on my totals. So 2-1 last week. I had a nice outright upset with Pitt. Georgia was a complete failure. It looked okay at halftime. Giving up that touchdown early really hurt me. And then A&M Tennessee under 55 was, I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one because a lot of people don't like taking Tennessee unders, but I really thought that could be a defensive struggle, and they proved me right on that one. So I'm happy with 2-1. I'm hoping for even better this week. Robbie, rough week last week, 0-3. I know you're going to bounce back, and I have full faith in you. You've got the best record on your sides, 8-6 in a season, but you are the sassy Jim of totals.
Yeah, I am.
0-7 on the year. The funny thing is, though, you pick our early bird total for the comps, which if everyone wants to get those free plays on our comp line, call 1-347-677-1700. You pick that early bird total, the last 4 weeks that it's won?
Yeah, I think it's hit 5 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and you can pick those, but you can't pick the winners on the podcast. So hopefully we get a winner on here this week and get you out of this totals funk.
Yeah, the week didn't start off well. I used West Virginia, and of course they lost in great fashion on a Hail Mary on the final play of the game. And then I'm like, oh, this is how this week's gonna go. And then James Madison did their part and scored 41 points, and Georgia Southern only put up 13, and that total came up a few points short. And then I used Ohio, and they were up 6 at the half, and then just threw some pretty bad picks and just were shut out in the second half. So yeah, rough week, looking to bounce back.
Felt really bad for you in the West Virginia one and the Georgia Southern James Madison one. Those two were right there. In Ohio, it looked for a while like they might cover.
Yeah, they're covering at the half, but yeah. Unfortunately, you have those weeks where everything just kind of goes completely sideways for you. And
well, I cursed Georgia last week by calling Vanderbilt the sassy Jim of college football. So hopefully, I'm cursing the losing streak of your totals. But
yeah, it definitely needs to end at some point. And I didn't want to use any of the totals I put out for that comp because I want that to win, and I figured I would keep my podcast totals curse away from the comp totals, so that's why I've steered clear of using those. So
yeah, we'll just to make it clear, when we refer to Sassy Jim, that is not our good buddy Jim Seaman here. Sassy Jim is a different Jim, an altogether different Jim. He's what's the youth calls it? Their ops. Their ops. He's our op.
I don't know. I'm not a youth, or I'm not in tune with the youth. You might want to ask the youth of the office, and then that's.
Hey, Jake, is that true? Is that correct? Yeah, he's an op.
Okay.
Jake,
Yeah, I figured if anyone would know, he would. So.
Yeah. I'll double check with a couple of my wrestlers, because I do talk to those kids. So, all right. So let's get on to the picks. Jim, 3-0. You're the man, and we haven't had a directional Michigan pick in a while. We need some directional Michigan. I'm fiending for some directional Michigan.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off with Central Michigan -4.5, and they're playing Ball State. Now, Central Michigan has not been an overly impressive team this year, but Ball State has even been less impressive. Ball State's 0-4, straight up in ATS as a single-digit dog. They're 1-4-1 ATS, all is the dog in FBS games. Their only cover was last week, and they were big dog to Toledo, and they ended up a lot of the swirling rain kind of affected Toledo, slowed them up. They also benefited from recovering a fumble at their own 8-yard lines and stopping Toledo twice on downs. And forcing 2 short field goals to begin with, but they still gave up a touchdown at the end. Still lost by 7. Ball State's being outscored by FBS foes 35-10. Their most points in an FBS game is 24, and that's against Western Michigan, who has the worst defense in the MAC. Their most points besides that is just 14. The visitor in this series has won 6 straight, covered 7 straight. Now, Central Michigan is not getting a lot of distance on teams, but they did beat Akron by 7 last week. They still have 4 wins this year, and including after last night's dismantling South Alabama 55-3 over Southern Miss. Central Michigan actually beat Southern Miss 34-30. So they do have at least a few quality wins. And even when they lost to Buffalo 2 weeks ago, they were -4 turnovers. So they kind of did it to themselves, and they still had a yardage edge in that game in their loss. So really, when you're looking at it, Ball State's just not a good team this year. Central Michigan, they're actually still in the MAC West race. They only have 1 MAC loss. They do have some tough games coming up versus Northern Illinois, Toledo. So I really think they'll be concentrating here, and they're only a 4.5-point favorite, which I think is too little, especially against Ball State. So I say take the Chippewas and carry on.
Yeah, Ball State's been pretty bad. Reminds me of one of my favorite jokes. Knock, knock, Jim.
Oh, who's there, Chris?
D's.
No.
Oh, man.
Come on, you really thought he was going to follow through on that one?
No, I didn't. I knew he wouldn't. All right, let's move on.
What you got for us, Chris? Besides,
I'm going to go with a team that failed me last week because I'm glutton for punishment. But, Auburn has been better at home than they have on the road. They've really struggled on the road. But I keep going back to that Georgia game. They played Georgia straight up for 4 quarters. They were tied at halftime. I believe they were leading in the third quarter. They were leading in the third quarter, 17-10. This Auburn team, they're not that bad defensively. They have a pretty good defense. Now, they got exposed by LSU. The mistake I made in Power Sweep and our late phones backing Auburn last week was that they couldn't match up offensively, and I thought they would play a better game. And LSU's defense had looked so bad, I thought they'd move the ball better. But I also thought the defense would play better against LSU's offense. It doesn't look like anyone can stop LSU. So I'm not going to fault Auburn for struggling to stop LSU on the road in Death Valley. I think at home against an Ole Miss team that hasn't always played to their potential this year. I think this could be a good opportunity for Auburn to possibly pull an upset. They're a 6.5-point dog in this game. Ole Miss is 5-1. They did beat LSU, but that was at home. They beat Arkansas by 7, again at home. Their only 2 road games have been at Alabama. They lost by 14, and at Tulane. They were actually only winning that game by 7 in the fourth quarter, and got a pick 6 and a late touchdown to pull away and win by 17. It was a late field goal. But, that was against Tulane without Michael Pratt, their star quarterback. It was a weakened Tulane team. Ole Miss only had a 21-yard edge in that game. They were also only leading Georgia Tech by a touchdown. I believe it was early fourth quarter there. So I don't know that this Ole Miss team is quite as good as they've looked. Jackson Dart's played pretty well. Quinshon Judkins has not been like he was last year. Not nearly as explosive. And Ole Miss's leading receiver is questionable for this game, Jordan Watkins. He's got 36 catches for 536 yards. Their receiving core in general has been banged up. Trey Harris has missed quite a bit of time. So I really think Auburn is in a good position to keep this game close, possibly pull an upset. I would like to see them finally settle on one quarterback. And it's odd for me to say, but I think that should probably be Peyton Thorne. But I think he adds a little bit more to the passing game. But they have looked good at times with Robbie Ashford in the game. He actually was in on all their scoring drives at one point. They just rotate their quarterbacks back and forth. So, yeah, give me Auburn plus 6.5. I called the upset with Pitt last week as a home dog. So I'm going to go for the same situation. Bit of a letdown spot for Ole Miss. I think they could come out a little flat off the bye. Everyone always assumes teams will play better off the bye. I think Auburn, having lost 3 straight games, is going to be a desperate home team with a good head coach that needs an upset win. And Ole Miss might be a little flat at 5-1 coming off that bye week. So Auburn plus 6.5. All right, Robbie, let's get you back on stride this week. What's your first play?
Yeah, definitely looking to do that here. I'm going to go to the Big 12 and go with Kansas State here. They're hosting TCU. They're getting they're a 6.5-point favorite right now at home. The key with Kansas State is you want to use them, especially when they're at home. They're on a 7-1 ATS run as a home favorite in the Big 12 under their current head coach, Chris Kleiman. They're playing well. They're off of a 17-point win against Texas Tech last week. Still only with one conference loss, still in the thick of the Big 12 race. Kind of a bit of they're going through kind of a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a controversy, but they're going through a little bit of trying to debate on who's going to be their starting quarterback. And coming into the season, that would have been something I wouldn't have thought of because Will Howard was kind of entrenched as their starter. Didn't really play well early on. They brought in true freshman Avery Johnson. He's more of a running quarterback. He's just a pure running quarterback. He's only attempted 13 passes on the season, but he's already 4th on the team in rushing, and he ran for 5 touchdowns last week in that game. I guess Chris Kleiman just said they saw something with the quarterback run and they used it, and they ran the ball very well, ran for 272 yards, almost 6 yards a carry. In that game, Avery Johnson alone nearly topped 100. Trayshawn Ward topped 100 yards in that game. So I look for Kansas State, no matter who plays, to focus on that run game where they've put up over 220 yards each of their last 3 games. And they're facing a TCU team that just picked up a win last week. Actually was a 3-star. I believe it was both a 3-star and power sweep, and we use it as a 3-star as a late phone on TCU getting, I believe it was just 5.5 or 6, and they beat BYU pretty handily, 44-11. However, they do have a true freshman in Josh Hoover, who's going to be making his 2nd career start. However, this one's going to be his first start on the road, so a little different environment than playing in front of his home fans. And that the Kansas State environment can be a pretty tough place to play. Hoover did throw for 439 yards, did throw 2 picks. So there is also the possibility he could throw some of those picks. Kansas State has faced a much tougher schedule, number 29 versus number 73. And just the fact that this is still under a touchdown, I think Kansas State being at home, having faced the tougher schedule, going against a true freshman quarterback making his first conference road start. I like Kansas State's run game. Their defense has been playing solid despite some of their starters being in and out of the lineup. TCU, I still don't really know what they are. They looked good last week, but that was against a very flawed BYU team. They had lost their previous two Big 12 games. So I look for Kansas State to get the win here. I think by at least 10 points. So I'll take Kansas State minus the 6.5.
Yeah, I usually like playing against the quarterback making his first career road start in a hostile environment. And Kansas State's definitely in that position to win. And, still a good team, even though they're not going to quite reach the goals they had last year, probably. But they are still in the mix. Only one conference loss, though.
Yeah, only one conference loss, still a ton to play for. So, yeah, I think they'll come out here very fired up to play.
And that Missouri loss doesn't look too bad right now. Missouri's
no, and I mean they lost by 3 on a 61-yard field goal, so they were right in that game, and they had the lead for the majority of it. So yeah, and like
Missouri's
you said,
played really well since.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's go to round 2. Jim, you are going to lead it off. What is your second play?
My big play is something I usually don't do. I'm going with a big double-digit dog here, and that's to take Virginia plus 23.5 versus North Carolina. Now, I know North Carolina's coming off that big win over Miami of Florida, top 25 win, but I think that's part in Virginia's favor here. Virginia is off the bye. Virginia has actually covered 3 straight, all as a single-digit dog, and here they're getting over 3 touchdowns. In the series, Virginia is 5-1 ATS, and last year they only lost 31-28 as a 7-point dog. This is the largest this line has been in this game since 1982. And despite being 1-5 this year, Virginia's only being outgained by 31 yards per game. So they're kind of a deceptive 1-5. I'm not saying that they're going to pull the outright upset here, but I think they have a chance of keeping it within 3 touchdowns. North Carolina is 6-0, 5-1 ATS, but their only ATS loss was the only game that they've been favored as a double-digit favorite, and they were 19.5-point favorites over App State, and they only won 40-34. I'm sure their coach will bring that up, but once again, if you win by 21, they're happy. They're not necessarily looking at that line, and I don't think it'll even get up that high. I think Virginia is going to be able to slow it up to, I don't want to say a disinterested North Carolina team. But they're coming off that huge, as I said, a huge top 25 matchup. And this is just kind of when you're playing a 1-5 team, it's kind of hard to get up. And plus, they're at home. So a lot of times when you're at home, you like to work in those 3rd and 4th stringers late in the game. And so you don't kind of have that killer instinct here. And I think Virginia keeps it within that number.
And North Carolina over the last few years has been known to blow games when they're a big favorite. Last year they were a 21-point favorite, lost outright to Georgia Tech. In 21, they were a 13.5-point favorite, lost outright to Georgia Tech again. They also lost as a 13.5-point favorite in 20 when they to Florida State. So each year, the last 3 years, they've had a outright loss as a big favorite. They also have failed to cover a few times, like last year against Wofford. It was 2 years ago against Wofford. So there's been a few times where they haven't covered when they've been a big favorite. They also lost outright in their bowl game as an 11-point favorite in 2021 to South Carolina. So, notoriously underperforms when they're a big favorite in North Carolina, and definitely a flat spot. But dangerous team with North Carolina. They're playing really well. But I'll tell you what.
It is. This is a little scary, but.
I'll tell you what, though. Virginia is better than people realize.
Yes. And that's what I'm basing this on.
Yeah, and if you look at their record, they're 1-5, but the only game they played that they truly played bad from start to finish was the opener against Tennessee. They had James Madison beat until they gave up a late score. They only were trailing Maryland by 7 start of fourth quarter, but they lost by 28. North Carolina State, they lose by 3, and they were beating Boston College bad at half and ended up losing by 3. So, and I'll tell you what, I was impressed with Tony Muskett. I watched that William & Mary game. I know it's only William & Mary, but William & Mary actually has a really good defense, like a really good defense. Best defensive player in the FCS possibly in John Pius. And Tony Muskett played really well in that game. He made some nice plays with his legs. So, yeah, I could definitely see it, Jim. I'm with you on it. North Carolina scares me, but definitely makes sense given the flat spot. And Virginia's better than people realize. All right. I'm going to go on, and I'm gonna grab a play out of the Big 12, not something I normally do, but I'll tell you what, we don't love the card. We'll all be honest, we don't love the card this week. There's not as many games as I usually like. I'm like, oh, that could be a play, that could be a play. Not as many this week, so I had to go to the Big 12. And this is a game that was interesting to me because Cincinnati's lost 4 straight. And I was looking at it, and I'm like, why are they favored? And I started processing some of these losses. Against Miami of Ohio, they have a 538 to 358 yard edge. They lose by a touchdown. They were plus 14 first downs in that game.
And that was in overtime.
Yeah. So, and they were leading that game late until Miami tied it with about 5 minutes left. So Cincinnati very easily could have won that game. BYU, another game, 498 to 295 yard edge. And that game really swung at the end of the half. They gave up a touchdown right before halftime. Turnovers hurt them in that game. They were -2 turnovers. I believe Emory Jones, I think, threw a pick 6 at some point.
Yeah, that's how the BYU got their first touchdown, was a pick 6.
Yeah, so you got 2 games that they very easily could have won. They were +9 first downs in that game. And Oklahoma, they played Oklahoma straight up. That was not a blowout loss. It was 10-3 at halftime. They were only outgained by 49 yards. First downs were even. Statistically, they played Oklahoma straight up. It was a 10-6 game in the third quarter. So, that's one of the best teams in the country. A couple turnovers there hurt them. And Iowa State, they did not play a good game last week against Iowa State. Again, turnovers hurt them. I don't know that you're going to turn the ball over as much against a Baylor team that's frankly been really bad every game except for one half. So I'm looking at Cincinnati having played out of their 6 games, minus turnovers, they've played pretty well statistically in 5 of the 6. Baylor has played poorly in 5.5 of their 6 games, with the exception being the second half against UCF. When they were down, what was that score, Robbie? 28-7.5?
It was 35-7 late third quarter. It was really only about a quarter and a half where they came back. They were down 35-7.
Okay. So they've played about a quarter and a half of good football. Other than that, they beat Long Island, big whoop, and they have 11-point loss to Texas State, a 7-point loss at home to Utah with Utah's quarterback situation. That's not very good. 32-point loss to Texas, and their last game, they got absolutely smoked by Texas Tech. By 25, 39-14. So, yeah, I think the Baylor's, not a very good team, and Cincinnati is going to be excited. This will be their first Big Ten win. If they get it, they're laying a field goal. It's been fluctuating between 2.5 and 3. I'm calling it 3 right now for these purposes because it is a 3 last I checked. So give me Cincinnati -3 to get their first Big 12 win ever.
Yeah, and I actually did read something today that of the 24 quarters that Baylor's played, they've only scored double-digit points in, I believe it was 4 of those. So they're having a tough time scoring points, moving the ball. You brought up Cincinnati struggling last week. That was against the number 3 pass defense in the country. Baylor's all the way down at 105. So I don't anticipate them having the same struggles throwing the ball. Yeah, the fact that this is only a field goal kind of shocks me. I do like this play very much.
Thank you, Robbie. You make me feel even gooder.
Even
gooder.
Even gooder.
Yeah, my mom would smack the out of me for speaking like that.
Good job
Definitely.
censoring yourself.
Yeah, my mom is grammar police. All right, let's go into Robbie's play. We need another winner out of you, Robbie. Let's hit it.
Yeah, gonna go to the Sun Belt. Gonna go with Louisiana -3 against Georgia State. Since Georgia State became a Sun Belt team, Louisiana has actually won all 6 games straight up against Georgia State. This is actually, though, the second smallest line. Usually Louisiana's been like 21-point favorite, 15.5, 14, 17. They've yet to cover against Georgia State, but they're usually a double-digit favorite in this game, and they're not. It's only 3. And Louisiana is fresh off a bye. Georgia State did play. They beat. They're off of a win against Marshall. They beat Marshall by 17. Although they only were plus 17 yards and plus 2 first downs. They did get a block punt return for a touchdown that kind of sparked them in that game. Louisiana, though, kind of was lacking an identity coming into the season. They only have 1 loss in conference play right now, so still the Sun Belt West is up for grabs for them, so still a ton to play for. Georgia State, though, also sitting at 5-1 on the season, their lone loss to Troy. So both teams playing well. However, Louisiana does get this game at home, and Georgia State off of a big win. I question how they'll look here. Their defense at times has struggled. They're giving up 301 pass yards per game, giving up over 66% completions. While Louisiana does tend to run the ball more, they are averaging 242 rush yards per game. They're averaging 6.6 yards per carry. But they can throw the ball. Zeon Chriss has proven to be a very capable dual threat passer. He's hitting 69% since he took over as the starter. And Georgia State does have a good offensive attack led by their quarterback, Darren Granger. Louisiana, though, he's only given up 369 yards per game. They really only had 1 bad game on defense, and that was the Texas State game 2 weeks ago. But Texas State has an elite offense for this conference. I like Louisiana at home. They tend to play their best football at home. Georgia State on the road after a big win against a Sun Belt East foe. Give me Louisiana -3 at home.
Give me the Cajuns. All right.
Just hope they don't blow a big lead the last time I used them when they played Buffalo. So.
Ooh, yeah, that hurt. That was rough. Yeah, that looked like a win for a long time until it wasn't.
Yes.
None of that.
As has a lot of our plays this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, none of that backdoor bullcrap this week.
Oh, that would be lovely.
All right. It's totals time with Jim Seaman. Jim, you have won 3 totals in a row. You are Mr. Totals. Let's find another win for you.
Well, I'm going to try and make it 4 in a row, and even my record for the season, I think. I'm going to go with South Florida and UConn over 54. Now, this is, of course, being recorded on Wednesday, and right now I'm looking ahead at the weather, and there is some rain the first about 24 hours before the game starts. Right now, it's saying when the game starts that there'll just be a light rain. This is played on Kentucky bluegrass, so it is a grass field. But a slick field can actually benefit the offense because the wide receiver knows where he's going. The defensive back sometimes doesn't. And sometimes you can get somebody slips, which either gives the wide receiver a step or sometimes they fall down. So a lot of times when there's rain before a game, that's not necessarily the kiss of death for an over. It's more when there's something like the Ball State Toledo game where there's swirling rain with a lot of wind mix in. That'll give you an under most of the time. Now, at 54, The only South Florida game that's gone under this total this year is against Alabama and Alabama's defense. For the season, USF games are averaging 65 points per game, as South Florida is allowing 36 points per game. On the other hand, UConn has had 3 straight games go over, and the last 2 games, their offense showed up. They had 33 points versus Utah State, 38 points versus Rice. They're off a bye this week, but their last 2 games have totaled 67 and 69 points. UConn is allowing 31 points per game, so I'm looking for South Florida to put up some points here too. UConn's averaging 3.8 yards per carry, 160 yards per game rush on the ground, including 4.3 yards per carry at home. South Florida, for the last 5 games, they've allowed 3, and including 3 straight games where they've allowed 203 yards rushing or more. And on the road, they're allowing 207 yards per game rush, 5.2 yards per carry. I think everything points towards the over, and even with the weather, go with the over here.
Over 54, South Florida versus UConn. All right, I am 5-2 on my totals. Won last week with Tennessee and Texas A&M under 55. Finished an easy 20-13 final. I'm going to go back to Tennessee and stay with the under. Under 49, Tennessee versus Alabama, the big game, the 3rd Saturday in October. First off, Tennessee's offense not as explosive in general this year. They're last year they averaged 526 yards per game. This year, 444. Defensively, though, they're stout. 303 yards per game allowed. They're holding opponents 97 yards per game below their average. They're giving up 105 rushing yards a game, 3 yards a carry, and they get 20. They have 24 sacks in the season. Alabama's offensive line is terrible. I don't know how this happened to Alabama, but they have given up 31 sacks. 19% of the times they are dropping back to pass, they're getting sacked. They gave up 5 last week to Arkansas, 6 the week before against A&M, 4 against both Ole Miss and Mississippi State, 5 against South Florida, 5 against Texas. They're giving up sacks every week. Tennessee gets after the quarterback. Alabama is also averaging a Saban era low 3.8 yards per carry. Offensive line is just struggling. I also think part of that's on Jalen Milroe. He holds on to the ball too much, does not keep his eyes downfield, looks to take off to run, and is getting sacked. On defense, though, Alabama's typical Alabama, holding opponents to 143 yards per game below their average, only allowing 292 yards a game. I talked about how if Tennessee can't run the ball, they struggle. Tennessee could run the ball last week. They did. They put up the most rushing yards by far that Texas A&M allowed, 232 rushing yards last week. But Joe Milton was 11 of 22 for 100 yards last week and really struggled through a bad interception in the end zone. And they only scored 20 points. 7 of those points was on a punt return. That was really the difference in that game. Their kicker also missed 2 field goals. Alabama feels comfortable settling for field goals because their kicker hasn't missed one since last year when he played Tennessee in the big win for the Vols that sent the goalposts into the Tennessee River. Big rivalry game, big revenge game for Bama. I just think that these two defenses are going to stiffen up in a rivalry game. Alabama's not going to let Tennessee throw over top like they did last year. Tennessee does not have Jalen Hyatt anymore, which was the big difference in the game last year. And also, I don't think Tennessee's offense travels well. They only had 16 points, 387 yards against Florida, which was their second lowest offensive total of the season. They rushed for just 100 yards against Florida in their only true road game. They have typically struggled on the road offensively, and the offense does not work as well when there's a lot of crowd noise, and there's going to be a lot of crowd noise. So Tennessee and Bama under. Just looking to see if there's a series trend here. Now, the last couple have gone over, but I talked about, the difference 2 games before that went under. So the series has gone under before. 2 overs with Josh Heupel's offense, but Tennessee has been more of an under team this year. So under 49, Tennessee versus Alabama. And Robbie, to get you off the schneid, give us your winning total this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Utah State and San Jose State to go over 66. You brought up trends. The last 5 games in this series have actually gone over the total. It's been a higher scoring series of late. These are two teams that both struggle to stop the pass, especially San Jose State's pass defense ranks number 104. Utah State's pass defense ranks number 81. Utah State's throwing for an average. Their last 4 games, they put up 367 pass yards per game. San Jose State's got Chevin Cordero, who's averaging 266 pass yards in his last 4 games, through 325 against Boise State, 272 against New Mexico last week. Utah State's quarterback Cooper Lega, he's thrown since coming back from getting benched, he's thrown for the last 2 weeks, he threw for 387 and 363. So they're throwing the ball all over the place, as is San Jose State. San Jose State can run a little too, and Utah State does struggle to stop the run at times this season. Even looking at some of the scores that these teams have put up this season, San Jose State just last week, 52-24 against New Mexico. For a team like Utah State, they had a 45-38 game against James Madison. Last week was 37-32. The week before that against Colorado State was 44-24. So you got a team that's consistently, they've not given up less than 24 points in any game this season. And they're putting up, 32, 44, 34, 38. You got two teams that look like they can throw the ball. I would assume, I think both teams easily get into the 30s here. I think the winning team can get into the 40s. I would say San Jose State wins the game. I kind of see like a 41-37 type game here. So I expect a lot of points. The weather, like Jim mentioned, as of Wednesday, looks good. Looks like it's going to be decent out in San Jose. So yeah, give me the Spartans and the Aggies to go over 66.
Sounds good, Robbie. That is the picks for this week. As always, we like to give out a discount code that you can use on Power Sweep or late phones. $10 off any late phone package, including the totals game of the month. Right now, if you are a 23 sub, that college football totals game of the month is $79. If you're a 24 sub, it's $69. And you get $10 off that if you use the code totals. So totals is the code. It'll get you $10 off any late phone package. You can also use that on Saturday, Sunday Stars. You can use that on the exec. Totals is the code. And if you don't want to get one of the packages, but you haven't subscribed to Power Sweep, you can use it. $10 off Power Sweep if you want to use that as well. You got to make sure for the packages, call 1-800-654-3448. If you want to buy Power Sweep, you can call in or you can go to ncsports.com. Again, the phone number is 1-800-654-3448. Robbie, any parting words?
Thanks again for tuning in. This season's flying by. Can't believe this is already week 8, but we appreciate you guys listening. Hoping to give you, myself especially, hoping to get off the schneid and give you a couple winners. Hopefully we all have a good week. Hoping for 2-1, 3-0 for all of us. So take care, guys, and we'll again, thanks for tuning in.
And Jim,
thanks for tuning in. Take care, and hopefully another winning week for the podcast.
All right. Thank you again for listening. And to Sassy Jim, say hi to Mr. Dees for us.